Good to see everybody. So let's get going, and maybe we'll finish, maybe, the 7 churches today. We'll see how this goes, and then we can get into some even deeper stuff next time.
Are we in a rush to finish?
We're not in a, I'm not in any rush at all. Are you? Okay, good. Well, Charles says he's not in any rush, so we're going to take as long as we please, right? But first, of course, let's open with a word of prayer. Kind Father, we thank you again for blessing us that we can be here and have this fellowship with each other. We thank you that we can open your word and see what it says. And we ask that you would always help us to understand the things that we need to understand. We thank you so much. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, so as you know, we've been traveling 2,000 years in the past, halfway around the world, such a vastly different culture than ours. But we've also talked about the fact that basic human culture is the same, right? We're all prone to the same kind of temptations. People back then, just like today, a lot of people, it seems, want the last word. They want to be in control of the most people they can. They want the most power, the most money, etc. Isn't that true even today? So basic human nature, maybe that's a better way to say it, hasn't changed. Now, the culture of the civilization quite different. The way to think is quite different. And so we've been traveling up this amazing Roman road, the so-called Great North Road. And this area of the world is very mountainous. If you look at a map that tries to show the topology, the mountains, you see, wow, this is like a hard place to live. You have to, it's like Chris was saying, in Virginia, they have, it's so hilly, the cows have to have short legs on one side, long legs on the other side, so they can be roughly vertical when they walk around the hills. Now, we always tell that about the mountains of Kentucky, too. Except on one side, they have no legs. It's that steep. But it's amazingly steep, and I always think about Paul doing these trips. Now, of course, the Romans are very excellent bureaucrats, very excellent builders. And so where did they build these roads? Not on the up and down mountains, they were in the valleys. And so we see, even on this map, this is kind of a quasi-topographic map, I guess. But you see these darker areas, the mountainous areas. So there's this very nice, beautiful road going north, the Great North Road. And so we traveled up that road. We started at Ephesus, went north to Smyrna, north to Pergamum, and then we got on the Great Post Road, the Imperial Post Road, where the Romans built this amazing road so they could, honestly not really that much for the people, but they could move their armies quicker, easier, bring equipment in. And so we visited then Thyatira, the hometown of Lydia that we remember. And so now we're going down the rest of the Imperial Post Road and looking at these 7 churches and this great vision that John had. And he has a message for each one of these 7 churches sent by the Lamb, the slain one, whatever image we want to use. So we see these 7 churches, real live people, real live problems. And so we've looked at them, and every time, in every one of these messages, we see an opening phrase. From the one who holds the 7 stars in his hand, something like that. From the one with feet of bronze and so forth. So recapitulating this image that we start with. And then we have this wonderful I know statement in all 7. I know the things you're going through. I know where you live. I know that Satan's throne is right there. Another beautiful image that brings to our imagination things probably not quite as intense as to the people of that age. I know what's going on. I know what you're doing. I know what you're enduring. Then there's typically a little section of compliment, of praise. You're hanging on, good on you. You're enduring patiently, good on you. And then there's usually some criticism, but here's a problem. Not in every church. A couple of churches, there is no criticism really. But typically there's some criticism. And then this is almost like a a business management class in a way. You have to tell somebody some stuff and give them an honest critique. You start with kind of some good things they're doing, right? Then you roll in some constructive criticism, and then you kind of end with some encouragement still. Like we saw last time. Look, the people I love are the ones that I correct, the ones that I chastise. So even that's an encouragement. And every time I go through these 7 churches, I always think, wow, what an encouragement this must have been for these people, enduring all this state-sponsored persecution. It's astonishing what these people did and what they had to endure from the government itself. So how much fight back do you have against the entire government of Rome and all these Roman colonies? None, really. You're at their mercy. And so they were really enduring. So now, let's go south on this Imperial Post Road, and let's look at the church at Sardis. So a few things about the city. This is one of the very oldest cities. It was established way back, about 600 years before Jesus even. It is kind of on the side of a mountain, and it was heavily fortified. You know, most of these cities had to have big, thick walls. We think about the wall of Jericho and so forth. And some of these walls would be 40 feet high and 20 feet thick, and that was how you protected your city. Back in the day, there's no United Nations, there's no Interpol, there's nothing like that. Might makes right was kind of the way things worked. And so if you had enough soldiers and so forth and you wanted this city, people just did it. You just went and conquered it. That was no outrage really, you just did it. So how do you protect yourself? With these big walls. This was famous for a thick wall on the side of a mountain, really hard to get to. In fact, there was an old saying that was something like, if you wanted to say something was really long-lasting and powerful, you would say, you know, that's as strong as Sardis. It's never going to fall. It's kind of the idea. And of course, we wouldn't know that today. We don't hear that little saying. But back in the day, I saw it several times in some ancient writings. As strong as Sardis, as solid as Sardis. It was only about 10 miles south of Thyatira, and these roads are all important roads, important trade roads on here. Sardis was pretty wealthy, pretty prosperous place. Been there for a long time. Just think, how old is America, United States? Well, if we go back and if we want to make a time marker and say, okay, Declaration of Independence, right, 1776. Wow, 1776 to 2025? That's just 200 and what, 50-ish ballpark? Wow, that's a baby. That's a baby. Even when Jesus was born, this place was 600 years old. Amazing. They were fortunate because where they were, they had excellent water supply, which every city needs. They have excellent mineral resources and so forth. And they were famous for this phrase. I thought this was very interesting. The gold-bearing sands of Sardis. Even kind of rolls. So they had areas where they could mine gold, and it was just like laying on the top of the ground almost. Gold-bearing sands of Sardis. So let's see what the messenger is going to say about Sardis. So this is only one of 2 churches, 2 assemblies, 2 congregations that have really no compliment. It's just all criticism. So Laodicea, which we'll look at a little bit later, got only criticism. Sardis gets only criticism. So let's look at this. So we're in chapter 3 now, verse 1, chapter 3. We're going to start with the congregation at Sardis. Now, and of course, I'm going to say, just to make this point until you guys are sick of it. So, but just for me, I need to hear it over and over to think about it good. To the angel, we talked about this. What does that word really mean? John wrote angelos, a good Greek word that's used bazillions of times. It just means messenger. So when we see that, we've been trained to always think of like, winged angels, messenger of God. And in that case, if it's a messenger of God, in the Old Testament, he would be malach. Same idea, messenger. Messenger of God, then it would be quite legitimate to think of this powerful being with wings, because we have this description of beings that I think we just can't understand. And so the attributes are given to us in actual things that we can understand. Wings? I know what a wing is. I've seen birds and things. What does it really mean? Powerful, can fly, can move. It's not limited to some one geographic spot. Who knows? It might be. But it also just means messenger. It just means messenger. Hey, Dean, could you pop over and, check and make sure all my sheep are okay? You're an angel. Thanks. You're an angel. You're an angelos. You're a messenger. To the ecclesia, or if we want to kind of outpronounce it, ekklesia, called out of, assembled out of the group. Another very common word, it just means assembly, get together, town meeting, something like that. But it's also meant to indicate the people called out of the world. Ekkaleo, out I call. I call out the people from the world. Come here. So church, though, to us today, that kind of implies a building to some people. We talked about that. In fact, Ben did an excellent job talking about that, right? A lot of people, if you see them on the sidewalk, and we say, hey, do you go to church? Oh, yeah, I go to, so-and-so church. Well, you go to a building. Is that the church? No, it's the people, the called out people. So, therefore, just to kind of overemphasize that point, I'm going to say the assembly or the congregation. So to the messenger of the assembly of the town of Sardis, say this. Who is saying this? The one who has the 7 spirits of God and the 7 stars. And that's referring back to the beginning of the vision. That's who's saying it. Somebody with authority is saying this. And here's the I know statement. I know. I know what you're doing. I know what you're up to. I know your works. And now this kind of stings a little bit, don't you think? You have a reputation for being alive. But hey, reputations can fool us, right? You have the reputation for being alive. And now here's this amazing contrast, this sort of biting contrast. But you're really dead. You think you're alive, but you are dead. Yeah, you got other people fooled, but no, you're dead as a doornail. And so now the admonition then is there in chapter 3, verse 2, wake up. So wake up. It's like you're sleepwalking through life. There was a famous American psychologist who said, people, bless all of our hearts, we're all kind of a mess, really. We sleepwalk through life, hardly ever bothering to think an independent thought, hardly ever bothering to think about anything. And he said, you know what? We're born awake, but then quickly we fall asleep. And the pressure of the world encourages that. And we sleepwalk through school and sleepwalk through raising children and sleepwalk through going to work. I said that one time somewhere, and the person said, I even sleepwalk when I drive. And I said, what do you mean? They said, haven't you ever got in your car to go somewhere and you're driving, and then an hour or so later you arrive, but you don't remember any of the trip? Has anybody ever done that? You're on autopilot, autopilot. You don't even have a Tesla at that time that has the autopilot. Wake up and strengthen what remains. Oh, this is so biting, isn't it? In fact, what remains is about to die. What you've really got left, bless your heart, it's not very much, and it's about to bite the dust. So you need to wake up and smell the roses and do this. For I have not found your works complete in the sight of God. Now, when you see that phrase, this is English Standard Version. What does that sort of imply to you? Your works are not complete. Or if you have another version, what does it say instead of complete? I think, if I remember correctly, The King James lineage tends to say perfect, right? And in just 1 second, I'm going to tell you what John actually wrote. Chapter 3. I got to guess, but let's be sure. Yeah. So John used the Greek word pleroo, which means fill up. Fill up. Like fill up this pitcher of water. Fill up something. So complete. It's not filled up. It's kind of the idea. Now in English we translate that complete. I'm trying to remember, perfect is like the King James lineage. So King James, ASV, so forth, coming forward, is going to say almost certainly perfect. And I think that's a problem in modern American English, because what does perfect mean to us today here in America, 2025? Flawless, right? Paul really says things like this a lot, you know. But when that which is perfect comes, the King James lineage says, now that's a different word there, perfect. That is teleos, completed, finished, accomplished kind of thing. But once again, when that which is perfect,
You're talking about 1 Corinthians 13?
thank you, yes. You know, when that which is perfect. But that teleos really more in modern American parlance means something like mature, the way it should be when it's grown up and mature. So fill up. Your works are not filled up. Now let's think about that kind of backwards. If your works are not filled up, then what are they? Partial, lacking, half-hearted, wishy-washy. We might say play acting. We know Jesus really criticized the temple leadership a lot. And in fact, he even sort of got up in their face with fighting words. You bunch of hypocrites. You hypocrites. You play actors. That's what you guys are. You're the temple leaders, but you're a bunch of play actors. Oh, those are fighting words, aren't they? So something's going on here. It's dying out. Your works are not really filled up. They're partial. They're incomplete, something like that. Remember all the stuff you've learned and heard. Remember what's gone on. And now here's a little bit of a threat, kind of, isn't it? Now that's kind of a hard way to say that, a threat. Let's say a consequence. How about that? A consequence, a natural consequence of what will happen if you let this continue. So if you don't wake up, what's going to happen to you? What's going to happen to you is it's going to die out. It's already on the way to dead, right? You need to fix what remains and is about to die, we just read. So, of course, that will die out. So if you don't wake up, I will come like a thief. Now, we know that image is pretty common in the New Testament, right? A thief in the night. I will come like a thief in the night. You're going to be surprised. And you will not know what hour I will come against you. Wow, this is what I think of. Would this be encouraging at all? If you were those people and you read this to your congregation? Ooh, I think it'd be a great encouragement. Well, this is a correction though, right? I will come against you. What this reminds me of, let me just put this Ephesians 5. So now we know Paul wrote a whole big letter to the church in Ephesus. We've read John's message, this short message to the church in Ephesus. We can go back and read the big letter that Paul wrote to the church in Ephesus. And here's one spot where Paul quoted something. We don't know quite exactly what it is. A song, a poem, a famous saying. But Paul said to the people, he basically said, look, you guys are kind of sleepwalking. You're going through this. And then he says in Ephesians 5:14, Egaire hukathodon, wake up, you sleeping ones. Wake up, you people that are dead asleep, and rise from the dead. So Paul is equating dead with like sleepwalking, being asleep, not really knowing what you're doing, whatever. And Christ, probably a better translation would be, will illuminate you, will shine on you. That's why it says, Paul says to them, rise up, O sleeper, and wake from the dead, and Christ will illuminate you. To the Ephesians. So this idea of awake, asleep equals dead. You better wake up and get things going.
Can I ask something?
Oh, please, absolutely.
Just a layer of thinking with this. And just think about contextually the other churches. You kind of put them as a sandwich, on both sides of these guys. And, all of them are about really them leaving their first love. All these things, and he kind of uses, for lack of a better term, a word picture differently with each one. Just to kind of help illustrate something.
But kind of the same message,
But kind of the same message. Jesus does the same thing. He walks up to somebody and he says, what's your name? Do you want to be well? He asks all these questions. Well, he's really asking the same question over and over again. Are you tired of this? Right? And, you look at this one right here, so just remembering that the purpose of the church is to fulfill the wishes, they were the body, right? So the purpose of the body is to fulfill the wishes of the head, right? I'm the one that holds the candle. I'm the one that holds the stars. I'm the one that, I'm the one that's in control. That's kind of the illustrated picture that we get this peripheral, view with. Now, I think if you key in, you didn't circle this, and I'm not saying, that you're doing it bad or mine's ways better, but if you circle the word works right there, that's ergon, right? So you have this thing that was manufactured or contracted to do, or this picture of something that you had you were specifically tasked with this thing, and so if you would look at it from this perspective and say, okay, Sardis, you have this reputation for all this stuff that you're doing, but you're really not doing the job. And it reminds me of where I worked at. I mean, we had 9,000 employees, literally, but only about 3,000 actually made anything. The other 6,000 were what we called supporting, roles. Well, I can tell you this, that a lot of people got real good at walking around with a clipboard and flipping it and nothing on the page, right? And I think that's what you're getting a picture of here, is that Sardis, you're really good at this huge, gob of people that look like you're so busy, but you're really not getting anything done.
Yeah.
There are people there that are making chips, right? Somebody is making a product, and you're, amongst the churches of Sardis. But you guys, you got a whole lot of people flipping that old clipboard, looking real busy, but ain't got nothing on the pages and ain't got no goal in mind.
So there's like a modern American version of that image, right? When you said that, I was thinking the guys filling potholes.
Yeah.
You got two guys actually in the hot sun filling it, and you got three guys with clipboards and hard hats walking around. Yeah. So bless your heart.
And they look busy.
They do.
Right?
Yeah.
Looking busy.
Yeah.
Busy, looking busy. Yep.
The King James has the word watch right there for wake up. And so I thought that to me, that makes a little more sense. Now, wake up's a good interpretation of it, but it makes sense in the context for like a thief, right? You're watching for the thief. And earlier, or other parts where he's talking about coming like a thief in the night, he's telling you to watch, right? So I think that might be a better way for my brain to understand.
Yeah, and I think that would be a reasonable translation too. All these translation teams do the best job they can. And so the ESV translation team thought, wake up is better. Watch out. I think that would be perfectly fine, in my opinion. Watch out. Be careful. And it's like Chris was alluding to, this works. Ergon, works, very common word, just means work. Even in modern American English, we have a word called ergonomics, right? The study of how to make work more efficient. Or something that's designed like an ergonomic keyboard, where the keys are moved so you can work easier. But in Koine Greek, that ergon means also something much more global. Your behavior, your actions, just what you do. in general. You know, I started to say who you are, but maybe that's a bit too much. So, but we tend to think about it as like doing something, like on a list of things. But it's more akin, I think, to the Hebrew term shalom, which means, look it up in the dictionary, it would say peace. Well, in English, modern American English, peace means lack of strife. But shalom, yes, encompasses that, but it also means, I think more importantly, the way things ought to be. Shalom. When Jews celebrate Shabbat, even today, they will say Shabbat Shalom to each other, a greeting, peace of Sabbath upon you. The way things ought to be. You're in your right place. Of course, there's lack of strife, but our modern English definition, I think, is way too compressed, like the same thing for work. And Tom, did I see you?
Specifically here to Sardis, really like we mentioned with most of the other churches that are referenced here. You know, it reminds me, there's some teachings of Jesus, one of them a parable of the tree that doesn't produce, and you give it time, and you kind of work it and fertilize it, do all you can. But if it doesn't produce, it's going to what? It's going to have to be cut down. And you kind of get this feeling that these words are kind of like that. I mean, literally, he says you're dead. That's pretty serious. You know, this is like, I think wake up is a good translation here, because dead people don't watch. Dead people got to what? So to speak. They got to come back to their senses. They better wake up and get going here. And, you know, it seems odd that he's going to come against them, but in a way, if you're dead, if we or they or a congregation or we as individual followers of Jesus, if we're dead spiritually, if we're not accomplishing his will, his purpose, you know, for these people, they had it pretty tough, like you mentioned in the first century. Didn't change their purpose, though. Didn't change what Jesus intended them to be about, you know. So that's the thing. Wake up, overcome, conquer this, because it's going to be worth it.
Exactly. And like, you know, Paul uses the battle accoutrement that they were all familiar with of the Romans, the shield of, the helmet of, and so forth, because it is a battle with the world, isn't it? And I always think back to Romans 12, and as soon as I do that, I think back to the J.B. Phillips translation when they were translating while the Nazis were bombing London and they were in the bomb shelters. And it's kind of a quasi-paraphrase, I think. And he said in Romans 12, there at the top of the chapter, don't let the world push you into its mold. And that's a wonderful way to say that, because that's what the world is doing all the time. There's all this peer pressure. I often think, man, I'm so glad I'm not in high school now, because it seems to me crazy time in high school. All this peer pressure, trying to get you to do stuff. You know, Ben knows far more than I do. Absolutely. Emily knows far more than I do about that, what these kids are facing. And just like you're in this press, and there's a certain mold, a certain shape that the factory's making, like a little plastic car part or something. And that mold goes squish, you know, with like 50 tons of force. And when it comes out, that's your shape now. That's what the world is trying to do. Push, push. But it's much more subtle. It's like John Lennon. Oh, I hate to quote John Lennon. But I so agree with this. He said, you know what? Life is what happens while you're busy doing something else. Isn't that true? How many times have I heard people say, oh, you know, my kids, it's like they were a little baby, and now the next thing I know, they're in college. You know, all that time. What do? We just, I don't know, sleepwalking.
Well, it's really a good, you know, Tom was alluding to it, and I was too, that we can't fool ourselves as a church. You know, we can't use a standard of what we get as a pat on the back. You know, I mean, like, we can't worry about what you know, you have a reputation. You know what that means? They've looked at an external standard. That's where reputations come from. They look for external validations. And so if you have this external validation as a church that you're doing the right thing, well, what's your standard? Where you get your pat on the back from? And we've got to make sure that we are really fulfilling the purposes of the Lord and not some kind of horizontal comparison.
And I think that's one of the important reasons for the 7 messages that we can look at even today. Because I've had some people say, well, that doesn't apply to us today. That's 2,000 years ago. And I say, look, human nature is the same. Nature of the world is the same, trying to push us into this certain mold. So let's continue verse 4 here. But, now here's a little bit of, relief. Whew, man, I thought we were in like irreconcilable doom nation. Is that a word, doom nation? We'll use it. Irreconcilable doom nation. Nothing we can do. Well, not quite, because the message says, look, there's still some people in Sardis, though. And now here's this other beautiful image of a white garment. Even today that holds, right? But especially back in the ancient times, it was so difficult to make things really white. You could make things light tan, light brown, because natural fibers are that color. So if you were weaving flax clothing, wool clothing, yeah, it could be, light color, but very rarely white. And the modern bleaches that we have, the bleach fabrics didn't exist back then. They had some kinds of bleach, they did, but it was not very efficient. So white is really a wonderful image of purity, of doing things the right way. So you have a few names in Sardis still who have not dirtied up their clothes. And they will walk with me in white because they are worthy. So there's that image that would have made total sense to anybody back then. And now here's this conquer idea again. The one who conquers will thus be clothed in white, and I will never blot out his name from the book of life. In fact, I will confess his name. Do you know this guy? Do you know this lady? Oh, absolutely. They're one of my people. Absolutely, I know him. And so I will not blot out the name. Now, somebody once said to me, oh, so see, that proves once saved, always saved. I will never blot out their name. And I go, oh, you have to look at the symbology here, right? The symbology. It says, the action of Jesus will not to kick you out. But can you leave voluntarily? Oh, man. I mean, the giant sweep of the scriptures is watch out, be careful, don't ruin your faith, don't make shipwreck of your faith over and over again. Encouragement, encouragement. Stay, endure, persevere, have patience. Lest you fall. Now, I can find a handful of verses that build up this security, which I love it. No one can snatch you out of my hand. Doesn't say you can't leave, you can't abandon me if you so choose. In fact, the great sweep of the scriptures is that you got to hang on. Don't abandon me. Don't leave me. Yeah, Tom?
Just within that sentence structure, that's conditional. The one who conquers, that's the one who's not going to get blotted out. If they don't conquer, they're not just going to lose their lampstand.
There it is.
They're going to lose their name's going to come out of the book of life. I mean, that's a conditional statement.
There it is. And then finally, here's the ear statement, the one I call the ear statement. That's in all 7 messages. All 7 have the I know statement. All 7 have the ear statement. Hey, if you got ears on your head, use them, which is a wonderful way to say, look, listen up. Are you listening to me? Listen up. Listen to me and do what I say. So now let's do our little summary that we do for all of them. So we'll put compliments on the left, criticisms on the right. Compliments. Nothing really. Well, wait, weren't there a few people that were, yeah, okay, is that a compliment? I thought about putting it on, but I thought, well, not really. That's like in the second section of encouragement a little bit after I've kind of sort of beat you up with this earned criticism. Now, what are the criticisms? Well, you have a reputation of being alive, but you're really dead. Your works are not filled up. They're incomplete. They're partial. They're half-hearted. However we want. I should have looked up in a few of the better paraphrase versions to see what they use, but I didn't think about it until just now. So.
Well, I think that the partial workers is a criticism.
Well, I think so. Yeah, absolutely.
He's like, look, guys, y'all, you got the 90-10 rule going here.
It's a biting criticism.
Yeah, you got 10% of the people doing 90% of the work.
So let's go about 10 clicks further south. So 6 miles-ish, something like that, further south on the Imperial Post Road, and we'll come to the city of Philadelphia. Now, in Greek, we know, just like Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, we know the root of that word. Philos is one of the Greek words for love. Agape, philos, storge, and then eros, physical, sexual love, right? So 4 words. How many does English have? Solamente uno, right? Just one. Well, that's true in all languages. Some languages are really strong in certain expressions and weak in others. English is strong in certain, weak in others. This one, love, it's kind of a little bit weak in English. You know, I love a good BLT when the bacon is nice and crispy. Well, is that the same thing as, you know, I love my family, etc.? Well, of course not. We know that, right? But we just got one word. Let's do our standard thing. Let's look at the city of Philadelphia. So just down the road, it was really founded as a way to push Greek culture further into Asia. And so that was kind of the purpose of founding this city. Not terribly old, but popular. It was popular because it was famous for exporting wines, which is interesting. It was almost totally wiped out in AD 17 by a big earthquake. These are mountainous regions, earthquakes all over the place. A lot of these beautiful Roman temples and so forth were collapsed by earthquakes over the years. And this was bad, though. People were afraid to go back in town because a lot of people had these, you know, stone walls fall on them and squish them. And so they were kind of living in tents for years, afraid to go back in the city because of aftershocks and so forth. Like Smyrna, though, right across on the Great North Road, no negative comments. Wow, that's impressive. No really significant criticisms here. So let's dig in. Chapter 3, verse 7. So, to the messenger for the congregation in Philadelphia, tell them this. These are the words from the Holy One. And now we're going to use this beautiful imagery from Isaiah, really. The root of Jesse will be the lineage of the Messiah, who will be the end of the plan come to earth. The key of David, the Holy One, the true one, the one that possesses the key of David, the man after God's own heart, the Davidic line, the line of the Messiah, the one who opens, and when he opens, nobody can come behind and shut it. And if he shuts, nobody can come behind and open. So there's an image of authority, power. Now, what are you going to say? I know your works. There's the I know statement. We knew that statement was coming right after this little intro sentence. I know your works, your ergon. I know what you're doing, how you're behaving, how you're thinking, how you're acting. The whole package. I know. And look, I have opened the door in front of you, and nobody's going to be able to shut it. I know that you don't really have any power. Well, of course you don't. You're just people in this Roman city. Of course you don't really have any power. But even though you don't have any physical power, really, you have kept my word and you haven't denied me. Now, we know in a lot of these Roman cities, the authorities would come in when they were annoyed at people, needed people to blame, or just wanted to beat up on somebody, and they would say, oh, you're one of these crazy Christianoi, the ones that follow Christ. You know, the guy that said, eat my flesh and drink my blood, cannibals? That's what you guys are. So, tell you what, I'll give you a deal. If you will just reject that name and go over here and be a good citizen of Rome, which means you're going to go worship the Roman gods, of course you are. That's what good citizens of Rome do. So if you will just reject that name, do your citizen duty, then we're good. We'll leave. Everything's cool. But if they didn't, it was bad news. And so the message is, you haven't denied me, despite that. Now here's the synagogue of Satan again, term, the assembly of the adversary, if we want to use lowercase s, or the assembly of the capital S, the adversary, the one who is against God. There are people that say they're Jews, but they're really not. They're just a bunch of liars. They lie. Look, I'm going to make them eventually come and bow down to you. So that image here is, yeah, they're in charge now, aren't they? They're in charge now. But this is now. Let me tell you what's going to happen. What's going to happen is they are not going to be in charge. In fact, you guys are going to be in charge. Now, this is a foreshadowing way into the future, right? Return of Jesus, basically. Long time in the future. And then they will know that I have loved you. They will know that you're one of my people. You're my guys. And we see this thread throughout Revelation, even this front section here. Rome is in control. They think they're the big giant dog. They think they're super rich, super powerful. They think that the universe rotates around them. Nope. They think so. No, they're just one in a line of these conquerors that think they know all. But no, let me tell you who's really going to win the battle.
Isn't it interesting that every conquering culture is
Always use that phraseology. That they, to some degree, they have in their historical record that they're the center of the universe. Pharaoh, I'm the day and evening star. Japan, the land of the rising sun. They thought the sun had to rise on Japan before. It's just a
Very common.
Yeah, the synagogue of Satan really doesn't have a lot of tools in the shed.
Persia, Ahasuerus, the king, and all those guys. Of course.
over again?
Yeah, it's just the way it goes. Welcome to the world, unfortunately. Verse 10, because you have kept my word about being patient and hanging on and enduring, I will keep you from the hour of trial that is coming on the entire world. Now that word keep, I did look that up because I was expecting it to be tereo, which in fact it is. So tereo means something like watch over, guard. It implies some kind of protection. But it doesn't necessarily imply this will never happen to you. There'll be no bad days. It doesn't necessarily imply that. It's the same word used in John 17, the beautiful high priestly prayer of Jesus, when Jesus said, look, you guys are in the world, yes, but you're not of the world, just like I, Jesus, am not of the world. I will watch over you, I will guard you, I will protect you, something like that. There's some type of implicit protection. It can even mean, in many cases, observe, so I'm aware of what's going on, but I'm not going to intervene. That's possible. But I think it's a spiritual protection, maybe even just a comfort protection. I'm coming soon. Hang on. Hold fast to what you have, so no one may seize your crown. There's another conditional, right? Don't give up your crown. Don't give up your position in that image of being a ruler. And here's that conquer statement again. To the one who conquers, I will make him a pillar in the temple. Now we're going to build an image of the actual physical structure. You will be like the temple. Now we know that also appears in the New Testament, right? Your bodies, plural, are a temple, singular, of God. So here's this image. You'll be like the pillars that hold up the temple. The name of God will be written on you in the new city, the new Jerusalem that comes down from my God out of heaven. And I will give you this new name. All things will be made new, as we'll see later in Revelations. A whole new thing. This old stuff is going to be gone. There will be no need for sun nor moon because God himself will be there and he will illuminate everything. And he will wipe away every tear. Remember that from Revelation 20, 21, 22, that repeating theme. Tom?
This is a nice one to hang on to because we start reading about numbers and names getting put on people's.
666 on the hand, on the forehead.
People get all carried over 66 on their forehead or on their hand. But in this same flow of stuff, it says God's going to, if you endure, he's going to put his name on you. You got his name written on you. And this is one of those things that uses that same.
The name of the Father. Yeah, that's right.
It shows ownership, right? It's who owns you, right? Does Satan own you? Or does the Lord own you? No, put my name on it.
In fact, this is kind of like the opposite of the Shema from Numbers 6. Right upon your, take the word of God, let it be upon your mind, let it be upon your arm. Speak of it when you rise and when you sleep and so forth, with the idea of it's always on your mind. That's what guides you. That's who you are. But now, when we get to the 666, it's going to be, no, I don't want that Shema stuff on your head. I want you to conform to the world, and I'm going to give you a 666. We'll look at that. That'll be a fun section. It's
Kind of like in Toy Story when Woody gets Andy written on the bottom of his foot.
see those toys.
Bring this to all levels.
Thank you. Yes, appreciate that. That's lovely. I love that. I love that. And here's the ear statement, of course. So if you got ears, use them. Let's do the summary, and then we'll be done for today. And then we'll pick up and look as we travel to the last one, Laodicea, next time. What are the compliments? You guys are not very powerful. Man, these Romans got you. Yeah, this is state-sponsored persecution and so forth. And the world itself is pushing you in its mold. Even though you don't have any power, really, you've kept my word. You haven't denied my name. You've endured patiently. You're hanging on. What are the criticisms? Philadelphia? Essentially none. What a good deal. What a good deal. So we're getting close. How close are we? Just Laodicea. And that's good because we'll have a whole time to look at this, because this is one, I think, of the more misunderstood cities and what the message is. And we've got the hot and the cold and so forth, so we'll spend some time looking at that. If you want to look ahead, read that a bit. And also, if you want to look ahead for the kind of the next section, read the first 2 or 3 chapters of Ezekiel and the first 2 or 3 chapters of Daniel. And you're going to see John is going to use that imagery, just almost like a copy-paste from those two, just the first couple or 3 chapters. And you'll see why the early Christians would instantly understand this imagery, even though we have a hard time with it. So you guys have a blessed day. Appreciate it. Lord willing, we'll see you next week.